Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. In today's video I want to present to you another interesting mosaic stone that sheds some light on the state of Germany, on the colorful Republic of Germany in 2021. So while looking at the glory and the beauty of the Germany of the past, you can listen to an illuminating tale of the ugliness of contemporary Germany. So I reported in recent videos about a deed that was committed in Würzburg, and almost at the same time there was a very similar thing happening, not in Bavaria, but in the southwest in Baden-Württemberg. And that incident didn't make it into the national press or media coverage like the incident in Würzburg did, and I think there are several reasons for that. In today's video I want to explain to you, according to the best of my abilities, what happened there in Baden-Württemberg, and also then what that means, because there are a lot of conclusions that we can draw about the media in Germany, about politics in Germany, about generally what is going on here. So long story short, it was also once again a person who claimed to be persecuted and who claimed that he needed our protection, and he came from the Hindu Kush, so not from where was the other guy from Eastern Africa. So he came from Central Asia or something like that, from the Hindu Kush area, and he was in Baden-Württemberg. Also very similar to the case in Würzburg, he was he did something bad before, so that was not the first time that he did something violent. And according to the press, what the press tells us, we know that a 24-year-old man killed a 54-year-old man at a breakfast break at a at work, basically in the corporate venues. So they were both at work and they have a canteen or something, and during the breakfast break, that's normally around 9 a.m., in front of all the colleagues, basically, he took a blade and he ended the life of a colleague who works there for a longer time already. 54-year-old guy, probably he worked for over a decade or many decades even at that company. So it is very interesting, I think, that this case didn't make big headlines. It was behind a paywall in a regional Swabian Post, or however this very, very tiny regional newspaper is called. Nobody heard of it other than in the immediate vicinity of where the case happened. So what was different? And it is so interesting that his plea for asylum was not granted, just like in the other guy's case, and so he was afraid that he has to go back to his beautiful home country, and that's why he fled to, I think, Italy or Spain or something, some other European country. But then after like a year or something, he was back again, right? So apparently he figured out that even though he wasn't granted the status of officially an asylum seeker, that Germany will not deport him anyways. And once he figured that out, he just came back. He just came back, which is, of course, the logical thing to do when you figure out that your host country doesn't even stick to their own laws. Okay, so, and then he committed this deed. Why wasn't that in the media? That is what I want to explain now. Why do I only read that from the Junge Freiheit, a conservative, smaller newspaper, and they did their own research. They had to dig deep in order to find that, I guess. First of all, they had to find it in this regional newspaper, and they had to get behind the paywall, so they needed someone to tell them. And then also they found news coverage abroad, not in Germany. Very interesting. It was covered in a regional Central Anatolian newspaper. Now you might wonder why that is. And this is how all the details also came to light. We didn't know about that because the authorities in Ulm, I think, a Swabian town, they didn't say anything about the case. It was just two men, 124, 155, end of story, nothing to see. That is what the authorities in Ulm were saying. So how did they get this information and where did it come from? Well, as I said, it was found in a Turkish newspaper. Why? Well, because the victim was coming from there, from Central Anatolia. And so in a regional Central Anatolian newspaper, all these informations were posted. It's interesting that you get proper and accurate news about incidents in Germany nowadays from a Turkish newspaper in Turkish language, but not from a German newspaper. So apparently these people don't matter. Yeah. So the person who was killed was a Turkish immigrant from Central Anatolia. And only because of that we know about it, because the Turkish, they have no problem with truthfully reporting about these cases and who the perpetrator was and where he came from. The Germans didn't say anything, and they didn't want to make it a thing. So there are so many things we can learn from that. I think there was a case before that I reported about where all this detailed information came from a Turkish source, not a German one, because the victim was Turkish. And what does that tell us? Well, there is obviously some kind of a rivalry between the arrivals from a little bit longer ago and the arrivals from not too long ago. They generally don't get along very well. And also, you can clearly see that Turkish lives don't matter anymore in Germany. Now, they used to be higher up on the progressive victimhood stack. They had a lot of victim points on their account. But now, I mean, they have good jobs. They work in the industry like this guy. And they probably have a family home and 2 cars. And they're basically white, right? I mean, not for me, but for the progressives. They nowadays, I mean, if their parents came in the 80s or something, then they're basically counted as white by now. So you don't have any victim points anymore. So you're just like one of us now. And when you're stabbed, then nobody cares. Yeah, that's an important take-home message for all our Anatolian long-term guests. You don't count anymore. Yeah. Maybe in the 90s you were still new and hot and exotic, but now you're just almost like one of us now, huh? In the eyes of the progressives, of course. Yeah, so that is what I would conclude from this case. Yeah, and another very, very trivial point is, of course, there was no video footage, obviously, I think. I mean, not that I know of. And in Würzburg, just minutes after the deed, there were always already these videos on social media. And this is why the authorities couldn't prevent not talking or not disclosing information on this case. Yeah, when a video is out, you kind of have to talk about it, because otherwise you look like a fool who wants to hide something. But in the case of the in Baden-Württemberg that I talked about today, that was at breakfast in probably a company canteen, and there is no video footage then. And that is why they said, okay, there is no video leaked, so why should we even talk about it, right? And also, well, Turkish lives, who cares? So and now I think I shared all the information that I know with you guys, and maybe we learned something from that, especially our Anatolian listeners out there. And if you want to, you can keep this video running. I will look at this magnificent castle from a little closer. I will just show you this castle. I think it's open. We can go over this little bridge here. Looks quite romantic. It's not a sunny day, but I think this particular castle looks great also on a rainy day. What a nice town. What a nice little park here. Some benches where I just found some rest. All right. So over this little cobblestone path here, we can get to the bridge and enter this castle. Yeah, so as I said, in the past Germany was beautiful and glorious, and now it's kind of ugly, actually. Well, we of course maintain these sites, but we don't make anything new anymore that comes even close to this kind of architecture and artistic sense, aesthetic sense. That's all pretty ugly, and I think it is ugly by design. But let's not talk about ugliness here. Let's look at some beauty. Very nice. And these constructions, these wooden wall constructions with this white plaster, we call that Fachwerk. So there are some Fachwerk elements in this castle. And now, this is a very small castle, so now we're already on the other side. And there is a roofed wooden bridge that leads outside again. I think you call this a moat or something like that. Some water around the castle. But I think that's a river here. Should have done my research a little better. All right. So that's a nice view, I think. This little tower, this little outhouse here. Yeah. Anyway, that was it for today. Servus, Kameraden.